I just want to make one comment, which is I just wish that the privileged actors I work with in the first world in development could hear this conversation. Because when I tell them that one of my key findings is using what you have, that in fact, developing countries all over the world, every day, ground level actors are innovating and creating markets despite poor conditions. One of the most common reactions that I get is, that sounds too simple. They tell me it's romantic. And I am so fed up. I am really frustrated because that is privileged talking. And I want to say that on this podcast. And they often ask me questions like, how can, you wrote this book about China's development, bottom up, using what you have. How can Africa copy it? In a kind of skeptical way. And then first of all, I'm like, why does Africa have to copy it? Africa, there are many creative people from Africa who will learn from the lessons and they will creatively adapt it. No one has to do any copying. And also there's this assumption and tone of a lack of agency in the global South, in Africa. I always hear that. Like, oh, it's such a hopeless situation. It's despondent. They need either best practices from the West or copying something from China. And I wish they will hear this conversation. I wish they will hear the example of Mr. Soji's work, so that when they tell me this sounds all too simple, please talk to Mr. Soji and hear the kind of creating political and institutional work that he's doing. So I want to send this message to listeners in Africa, because here in the first world where I'm based, I think that the message about Africa is disempowering. And in fact, people in the first world need to be educated about the innovation and creativity that's every day happening in the global South. I get a lot of pushback doing this lonely work in the first world. And I ask them, colleagues in global South, to join me in this conversation.